I'm Scott Goldman, and this is the Grammy Museum's Programs at Home. Our guest today is a boundary-breaking songwriter, producer, and visual artist. Her early work favored ethereal sonics matched to her unmistakable soprano. Over the course of her career, her music and sonics have grown more eclectic, mixing dream pop, R&B, electronic, and hip-hop influences. She's here today following the release earlier of her latest album entitled Miss Anthropocene. Grimes, thanks very much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And I seem to start every one of these interviews since the middle of March talking about quarantine. And I know you have a young son. How are you doing?
I'm doing, I guess, like as good as anyone can be doing. I feel like everyone's kind of doing the worst, but also, I don't know. It's like pretty good. Having a baby is fun. I'm making a lot of music. I don't know.
Well, so. I spoke to an artist not too long ago who told me that songwriters tend to be isolators, and I'm wondering if that resonates for you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the isolation isn't my beef with the world right now. The isolation is kind of good. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm usually isolating in general. Like, yeah, it's good for art.
Let's talk about the album. But to do that, I want to go back to the period after Art Angels. As you were thinking about making the next album, did you feel you kind of had a choice? You needed to make a decision about the path you were going to follow. Pop music versus something more underground or avant-garde or however you want to describe it. Was that in your thinking?
Yeah, so I really just wanted to see if I could do it, like challenge myself. And then with Miss Anthropocene, I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna make. Oh, am I allowed to swear? Sorry.
You're fine.
Okay, I was like, I just wanted to make what I want, and pursue kind of a more aggressive sound and more experimental psychedelic stuff. Especially like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, you've called the material on the new album ethereal nu metal, and I'm wondering if you, which is a fascinating term in and of itself, but I'm wondering if you had somewhat of a kind of a sonic template in mind or a direction that you wanted to take the sound.
I think I just have always been like, I wish you could get sort of like Nine Inch Nails but more ethereal, especially the songs like My Name Is Dark. Like I was like, I just want something like really heavy, like in a metal way, but that's like really kind of got like Enya undertones. Like I've just been like sitting, like waiting for that from someone else. So it just seemed like something that needed to be done. I guess like I was just sort of like looking for sonic holes in the musical landscape that I felt like I wanted to be filled.
There's a ton of sonic information on this album. There's layers of instrumentation and vocals, and it feels, to a listener, it feels very much like you're painting with sound. Are you restless when it comes to experimenting in the studio?
I wouldn't say restless. I would say I definitely like the first song I made on the album was 4 a.m. and I definitely like sit down and I'm like, I need to make something that doesn't sound like anything else. And I just kind of like, I can't like start the album until I get a song that just doesn't sound like another song. And so I'm just sort of like, that's like what I'm looking for. I'm just sort of just like kind of like throwing shit at a wall, trying to like get something that just sounds totally unique.
Well, when you're talking about finding something that doesn't sound like something else, are you referring to your own catalog or just anything you happen to hear current?
My goal is to make music that is new. Yeah. So that's kind of I would say the thing that excites me, the thing that like kind of gets me going is like when I can make something that I'm like, it doesn't exist or whatever. Like that's sort of my generally that's like the game I'm playing with myself.
Yeah. And one of the things, especially with technology today in the studio, there are literally endless amounts of ways to tweak songs and change and I ask this in all seriousness, how do you know when a track is finished?
I mean, frankly, with all my albums, like my team eventually is just like, it's done. Like you're not allowed to go anymore. Cause I feel like I would just go forever. Yeah, like I have a lot of issues. Like when I hear my old music, I'm like I just like want to fix it. So it's pretty hard. Although that said though, the realm of plugins and whatnot is super sick. And I think sort of an underappreciated art form, like the people actually making plugins and stuff. So I don't know, I'm like super fascinated with that whole world. And yeah.
That sounds like a rabbit hole you would be happy to go down. Creating that kind of.
It's not my scene to make that. First of all, I feel like I'm not on the level technically to be making plugins. I actually I made sort of a synth for Rolly before, but that's not like my brain style, which is in like why I respect it so much, because I find it pretty hard to make things like that. But I just think those tools are just like so sick, and like a lot of them are pretty cheap. I don't know, I just love where music's heading, where it's just getting like cheaper and cheaper, and there's just more at your fingertips and more sort of like not hardware. Although I love hardware a lot, but yeah,
but what's out there now, I mean, I play guitar, I have a little knowledge about this stuff. It really is remarkable the things you can do literally on your own and for not a lot of money.
Yeah, no, it's like just like magic. It's just like literal magic. Like it's yeah.
I want to talk about sort of the thematic kind of thread of the album, and a lot has been written and said about it. So tell me your thinking about kind of the concept for these songs, the thematic thread.
Well, it's crazy because it's such a different time than when I started making this record. Like when I started making the record, I was just like having such bad anxiety about the environment, and it just did not seem like it was the topic of the day yet. Whereas now it seems like it's like quite the topic. So it's like, I don't know, it just seems less. But like in general, like, I was just thinking a lot about existential risks to humanity in general. Like, I feel like we feel safer than we are. It's like we're in a weird time where we kind of have the capacity to destroy our own species technologically. And I feel like we're in sort of like a technological like moment where it's just like, can we survive it or not? And I just kind of, I was like, why do people... I was really like turning off the news. I was like, I like 2018-ish, like 2017, I was like, I just can't fucking take the news anymore. And I was like, oh, this is bad. I was like, if I'm turning off the news, it's just like not a good situation. Like, how could I make this more digestible, I guess, and I was like, well, I like the Joker. Like, I can handle like a villain in a comic book or something. And I was like, maybe it's just a bit more digestible and a bit less like painful to anthropomorphize things like climate change that are, sort of existentially distressing. And also maybe it's a bit easier to pay attention to them. I was like, like how could I get someone to like, why is everyone going to see a Marvel movie but like don't want to engage with climate change or other things? And then I kind of started getting into this idea of the new gods, and I was like, man, it would be so sick, like if there's like the goddess of plastic and the goddess of like, like opium or opiates. Like it's just like aesthetically that kind of concept just started really kind of consuming my brain.
Well, and all of this, given where we are with the pandemic, I mean, it's eerily kind of prescient in a way.
Yeah, it's really weird. See, I wouldn't make this album now because now it just feels mean. Like, it's like, because shit just got so fucked up in the meantime.
Well, that's really interesting in and of itself. That,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm just like now it just me like this album. It even kind of hurts my sensibilities at this point. I'm like, it just like feels so aggressive, and I'm like, everything is just so fucked up right now. I don't want to be like, like, hey guys, here's the comic book version of everything that's like brutalizing us. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, I wouldn't make it now. I feel like, especially like post COVID and everything, it's like, I mean, the thing I always say about social media is it's like kind of creating the collective unconscious or the collective consciousness or whatever. Like, it's like humanity, like, is actually getting linked psychologically, like in a tangible way. And so like everyone is sort of confronting everyone's suffering all at the same time. Like, it's like literally, it's just like you just like, you cannot escape from like the suffering, the sort of like mass suffering of humanity as a species, which I think is a good thing, because I think ultimately the only way to get through this is to like actually start having like better solutions to things. But it's just, there's a short-term mental health crisis for sure, because it just really is super painful. Like, so it just like, now Miss Anthropocene just see, like, I don't want to like add to the pain. So I'm like this, I'm like, oh God, this album is so like kind of like conceptually violent that like it just feels mean, but like, you know.
but you do cover. I mean, yes, there's the global climate crisis, and you kind of go there, obviously, but you do cover a lot of kind of intimate space as well, and there's a vulnerability in that.
Yeah, no.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think all this stuff, I feel like people have a lot of personal grief about things like whatever, like climate change or a pandemic or racism or whatever. Like, it's like there is just an actual cost, like personally. And I was, you know, like a lot of these things obviously affect me personally. Like, I grew up in Vancouver, and there's a lot of just heroin use and stuff in Vancouver. And like, you know, I have lost like a lot of friends to heroin related death or whatever. So it's like, you know, like that's like pretty front of mind for me. You know?
So are you? So even though we're talking about this current record, are you already on to the next thing? Are you already?
Yes, I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to. That'll like be a whole thing. But I think we're almost done.
All right. Well, I still have a few more questions about this album, and then, you know, we'll set another time to talk about the next one. So previously, and on this record, you've done, you know, 99% or more of your own production. And on this album, though, you do have some collaborators, some folks who helped with mixing or how, you know, what it might be. I'm wondering if even those collaborations have in some way changed your approach or your thinking about making music.
I mean, I'm definitely done with the sitting alone in a tower making an album by myself thing. I think Miss Anthropocene, I was like, as long as I'm on an independent label, like as long as I'm on 4AD, I was like, why would I spend money working with other people? Like, it's just really expensive. And you know, it's just like, what's the point, kind of thing, especially if you can make it yourself. And you know, you just I kind of had something to prove. Like, I just kind of wanted to like fully defeat any notion, you know, like people saying like, oh, she doesn't really do it. So, you know, but I feel like 5 records is a good amount of records to make on your own. At this point, like, I actually do really just want to work with more people, and because you can learn more. Like, it's like every time I get in the room with somebody, I get like significantly better at producing. Anyway, so
are you a good collaborator?
I think so. I think I'm good with the right people. I feel like I don't do a lot of sessions. It doesn't always, but like if I like choose someone who I think is like really fucking great at what they do, then it's going to be a good session. Yeah.
What would you look for in a collaborator? What does a collaborator kind of have to have for you to want to work with them?
Just if they've made some of my favorite songs. Like, I usually just, like, the record I'm working on now is like a collaborative record, and like I have like another collaboration coming out later this year that I made. Like, I'm like, okay, who's made my favorite songs? Usually like left of center. Like, I'm trying to find people who are like not but yeah, like, and then I just hit them up. I'm like, you know, if you make great music, we'll probably make great music together. Like, yeah. I don't know, I do a lot of cold emailing, not a lot, but like, if I think someone's sick,
how does that work out?
It's pretty good, yeah. I don't know. So, I mean, no, yeah, people usually respond. People respond.
Yeah. You know, you use, and particularly on this album, fantasy and villains and pop culture references. Tell me about the work, because I was interested to learn that you're a fan of Jack Kirby's. Tell me about his work, and I know it's influenced your visual art, but I'm wondering if in any way it influences the music.
I mean, he's just one of my favorite illustrators. I mean, he's obviously, I feel like Jack Kirby doesn't get enough kind of appreciation, because I guess he sort of died, and then like Stanley was sort of like, but Stanley also, like, I'm not trying to discredit Stanley, but it's like Jack Kirby just died before like the comic book stuff got more mainstream. So I feel like he's less in people's minds. I just, like, when I look at his art, I'm just like, what the, like, it's just so satisfying to me, especially with the way it's kind of like in my art, I do a lot of sort of like hard, sort of like science fiction looking stuff with like strong light and like a lot of like reflection, I guess. Not to like, but I would say that's pretty inspired by Jack Kirby. Like, he's definitely, I guess, a big inspiration for me. Like, and heavy line, like he does. I mean, it's a comic, so it's like going to be super line work oriented, but that's sort of like how I draw too, as opposed to like painting or something. But yeah, in general, I love modern mythologies, and I sort of think, I think there's a lot of modern mythologies that are like more important to us than we think, you know, like all the Marvel stuff. And I think is sort of like modern Homer, or like, you know, sort of controversial to say this, but like Harry Potter, or like Game of Thrones, or whatever. Like, it's, you know, obviously these things like Chadwick Boseman dying, like people like couldn't fucking take it. It was like a hero dying. So I feel like that's like, it's our Homer, or our whatever, you know. I'm interested in the track Idoru. Well, I mean, you know, I'm not sure how much William Gibson's novel influenced that or not, as the case may be. But as you're talking about all of this mythology, that's an interesting place to go. Well, what's crazy, okay, this sounds bad. I haven't actually read that novel. I love William Gibson, and I was like reading a lot of William Gibson while I was making this album. But specifically, every other track had like a weird name, and just the one song, Adore You, I was like, this is a boring name. I was sitting with my friends, and I was like, this is like I'm like, I need a better name for this song, but like, I feel like it should be the title of the song, because the hook is Adore You. So it's like, I don't want to like lose the title. And then my friend was like, oh, like, there's like a William Gibson novel called Adore You about like a digital pop star or something. And I was like, what? Like, this seems like too perfect. And then I like ordered the book, and then when I got it, it literally says For Claire. I opened it and it said For Claire, and I was like, what the, my birth name is Claire, that's not my name anymore. But I actually hate that name, but like it was just weird, which is his daughter, I guess. But I was like, this is really weird. It was like a trippy moment. It felt like a simulation, like sending me a sign. So yeah. Sidebar, not a related question, but I read that your most streamed artists last year were Doja Cat and Vangelis. Yes. Oh, both amazing. So tell me what it is about those artists that kept you going back to that music. I mean, I just think Doja Cat is like a genius, like, which I think more and more people are realizing. I've been like really obsessed with Doja Cat since literally like 2012 or something. Like, whenever she put out So High, I remember just being like, this artist is like better than people are giving her credit for. Like, you know, so I've been like a pretty big fan. Like, I even like, yeah, I just find it like, I find her voice very addictive. I feel like you can just hear her intellect like through the music. I know that's like a weird thing to say, but like, and now that she's sort of doing her weird comedy thing, it's like pretty obvious that she's pretty smart. So like, I feel like I'm not crazy for like hearing that. and her voice is just really, I don't know, it's just an addictive thing. Vangelis is just the same. I mean, Vangelis, I just think he's the coolest music in the world. Like, I just think you can just put on Vangelis all the time. Like, I like the Blade Runner soundtrack is arguably like my favorite album, like period, in all of history. And the thing I love about Vangelis, it's like in this weird moment in time where it both sounds really old and really new, and very little stuff sounds like it because it's like early synth music and stuff. So it's got this kind of janky, like early synth energy, but it also just sounds so futuristic for the time that it's just like this, I don't know, it's just like this perfect thing. Vangelis,
he was way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, so ahead of the curve. It still sounds futuristic. Like, it literally still sounds futuristic. Like, I just listen to it. Like, I listen to Vangelis like an absurd amount, like possibly too much. But yeah.
Vangelis overdose. So you've talked about and you've covered AI in your music. You've talked about it quite a bit. Yet the interesting thing is the algorithms that drive streaming recommendations generally don't know what to do with your music. And
it will get better, but
is it getting better?
I think it's more the algorithms. Like, people think we're not dealing with AI, and people like aren't worried about AI, and then they're like, and then it's kind of like all these artists not getting streamed, and only these artists are getting streamed, and I'm like, or you look at social media and like people getting so upset at each other and everything, and I'm like, this is like baby AI going wrong, like we're dealing with AI like literally all the time, and it's actually super impacting our culture and the way we listen to music and the way we communicate with each other, and the election, like it's super impacting everything, and everyone's just kind of like, it's not people always get really mad at me when I talk about it, but I'm like, just to be clear, like, we should probably be paying attention to the state of AI and the state of the algorithms, because it's a sketchy situation, in my opinion.
Agreed. So in the time we have left, can you hint at all about this new album, sonic direction? What can you say about it?
I would say it's definitely by far my favorite thing I've ever made. I don't want to say too much because I feel like I want to like think carefully about the first thing I say about it, and I don't want to just like say something offhand that ends up being like, with Miss Anthropocene, I just said a bunch of bullshit before I was done, and then like I changed some things, but everyone was like super attached to the bullshit I said at the beginning. So then like so I want to be like careful, but I feel like I shouldn't say too much about it because I'm going to my own grave.
Fair enough. So last question. I think you've referenced a couple of times that Grimes as a musical project was very youthful. Was you in a perhaps more youthful stage? So how have you evolved as an artist?
Very immature. It's a widely accepted reality. I don't know. I feel like it's growing up. I feel like it's getting a lot more like it feels very. I feel like when I listen to Visions, it feels like I can feel my lostness. And I feel like with each subsequent album, it seems a lot less lost and a lot more powerful or something. So I don't know. It's sort of intangible, but and lyrics, like when I was young, like this is definitely some like weird neurological problem I had, but I didn't realize music had lyrics. Like I thought all music had fake lyrics. Like I literally listened to music and it was like blah 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 blah. Like I thought like it was just fake words for some reason. So my first 3 albums are like mostly don't have words because I just like didn't think people were saying a lot of words because I literally don't know how that happened to me. But I think sort of like discovering poetry in my more recent work is like really has been really good for my brain. Although I do kind of want to make more music without lyrics again in the future. But yeah, I feel like the adding the kind of intellectual or like the sort of more cerebral part, because before music, when I would make music, it was just emotions. Like I was just like emotions, like, and I feel like there's this sort of more cerebral element kind of like growing with each time I like go for it, which I personally think is making it better. I know some people have qualms with it, and I will make more glossolalia kind of like nonverbal music or fake alien languages in the future. Because I actually think I like that kind of thing, but yeah.
Well, we certainly look forward to whatever comes next. For now, the current album is called Miss Anthropocene. Grimes, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and taking the time, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
You too.